In this video, we're going to look at the process of dividing decimals. We're going to look at two different situations. One where the decimal is in the dividend, and a second situation where the decimal is in the dividend and the divisor. Let's start out first with just the decimals as the dividend. Now we break this down into three steps. First one's pretty easy. We just want to set it up using a division bracket. Most of the time in assignments, quizzes, tests, you get a division sign that looks like this. You really can't solve it using the standard algorithm using that symbol. So we want to set it up in a bracket. Second, just straight up solve. Okay, no big deal with that. You've been solving division ever since third grade. And finally, we want to bring the decimal point straight up into the quotient. This is a little different than multiplication. It's kind of most similar to addition and subtraction. Instead of bringing it down, we're taking it up. All right, let's take a look at an example here so we can put these steps into practice. If we have 34 and 5/10 and we want to divide that by a factor of 3, first thing we do is we're going to set it up in a bracket. Now we just straight up solve. 3 goes into 3 once, which is 3, difference of 0, bring down our 4. 3 goes into 4 one time, which is 3, difference of 1, bring down our 5. And 3 goes into 15 5 times, which is 15, difference of 0. So nothing remaining. Third step, bring the decimal point straight up into the quotient. So we're right here, we bring it straight up. So 34 and 5/10 divided by 3 gets you 11 and 5/10. Let's do another one. And this one gets a little more interesting. This second example gets a little more interesting with where to place the decimal point. So let's take 108 thousandths, and we're going to divide that by a factor of 4. Once again, first step, set it up in a bracket. And now we solve. 4 will not go into 1, but it will go into 10 2 times, which gets us 8, difference of 2, bring down our 8, and it goes into 28 7 times, which is 28, difference of 0. Now, this gets interesting because our decimal point is right here, and yet we didn't use this 1 in the 10. Remember, we said 4 could not go into 1 evenly. So when dividing decimals, you actually have to put your placeholder in there. That is a very important step. So it is crucial to keep all of your place values in your digits lined up. So the quotient of 108 thousandths divided by 4 is 27 thousandths. One more example for decimals as the dividend. Let's take 87 and 3/10, and we're going to divide that by a factor of 5. So we'll go ahead and set it up in our bracket, and then we solve. Goes in once, difference of 3, goes into 37 7 times, difference of, well, multiply that, difference of 2, goes into 23 4 times, difference of 3. Ooh, now what do we do? Well, the cool thing about decimals is we can add as many zeros on the backside of this decimal point as we want, and it will not change the value. Think of it as if you have $4 or you have $4.00. Adding zeros on the end or the backside of a decimal point does not change the value. So that's what we're going to do. We're just going to tack a 0 on here, kind of like our ghost zeros in addition and subtraction. We got 5 goes into 36 times, which is 30, difference of 0. So now we're at a remainder of 0. Last and final step, we move our decimal point straight up into the quotient. So we have 17 and 46/100ths. So those are 3 examples of how to divide when the decimals are in the dividend. All right, let's switch gears here a little bit, and let's look into dividing decimals when they're not only in the dividend, but also in the divisor. It gets a little bit more involved. Okay. Step 1, same. Set it up using a division bracket. Step 2, this gets a little more interesting because we need to make the divisor a whole number by moving the decimal point. And you'll see that in the examples. It'll make sense in a moment. Step 3, move the decimal point in the dividend the same number of places. So if I had to move it in the divisor once, I'm going to move it in the dividend once. If I move it in the divisor twice, I move it in the dividend twice. And then the last 2 steps are the same as before. You solve, and then you bring the decimal point straight up to the quotient. So let's take a look at a couple examples here. Let's use our same numbers, but we're just going to put 0 or decimals in as our divisors. So let's take our 34 5/10, and instead of dividing by 3, let's divide by 3/10. So let's write it with our bracket. Now, here's where it's different. We just solved before, but this time, since we have a decimal here, we have to make it a whole number. So we're going to move it once to the right. Well, whatever we do outside, we have to do inside. We're going to move it once to the right. So now we just solve. 3 goes into 3 once. 3 goes into 4 once. 3 goes into 15 5 times. Now, our decimal point is at the end this time. So instead of 11.5, it's 115. Let's do another example here. So let's go 108 thousandths, and instead of dividing by 4, let's divide by 4/10. So let's set it up in our bracket. And now we have to make this 4/10 a whole number by moving the decimal once. So here we move it once. And then everything works the same as it did before. 4 won't go into 1, but it goes into 10 twice. Difference of 2. 28 7 times. Difference of 0. Now, remember last time we had to remember that it did not go into this first digit because our decimal point was over here. But now since our decimal point is moved, it goes straight up. We don't have to worry about it. All right, one more example here. Hopefully we have room. Squeeze it in here. Let's take 87 3/10 divided by, now we were dividing by 5. Let's go divided by 5/100. Let's see what happens. So let's write it out in our bracket. So we have to go over 1, 2. So here we go, 1, 2. Ooh, we've got a blank space here. No problem. Ghost 0 to the rescue. All right, let's go ahead and solve it now. Goes in 1 time, difference of 3. Sorry about that sloppy writing. Goes in 7 times, difference of 2. Bring down our 3. 4 times, which is 20, difference of 3. Ah, look at this. Now we already have that extra 0 we had to put on. And then it goes in 6 times. And finally, we're left with 0 as a remainder. So you notice, remember in our the first time we solved this, it was 17 46/100. Well, this time, since we had to move the decimal twice, now it becomes a whole number, 1,746. So it's all about moving the decimal point on both sides, making both sides of that division sign equivalent to each other. All right, so now it's time for you to go ahead and practice some on your own.